And hello everyone, it is Peter Sam, the Narrow Gauge Engine here, back again with another video. Today I'll be discussing which episode from each of the classic, hit and Brenner seasons respectively sum up the season the best. This one was tricky for me, as most of the time I couldn't pin all of what I like and don't like about a specific season of the show down to one episode. But I persevered and got a list that I'm okay with, for the moment at least. I want to shake things up this time, so we'll be going backwards, and this is also because at the time of writing this, I've been doing my research and rewatches for all of the episodes from Season 1 for the Season 1 community ranking thing that is already on the channel, so I want to leave that pick until the end. It gives my brain a break from that specific series, especially when it's been on my mind for the past 50 days. Can't eat, can't sleep, because every waking moment of my existence has to be filled with those 26 episodes. Anyway, I'm waffling. Let's start with the newest season of the lot. Season 21 is home to many episodes that house a lot of elements. There's heartwarming stuff and comedic value, there's good character dynamics and iconic voice talent. I could go on, but the episode I believe captures pretty much all of those elements that, for me, make this season the best of its era, is Springtime for Diesel. If you want a more in-depth segment for this episode, either my Season 21 ranked video or my top 10 best Brenner episodes video will provide that for you. In a nutshell, this episode does wonders for the character of Diesel, who's been stuck in this perpetual state of being a complete arsewipe for over a decade. We did get an episode one season prior that showed off his soft side called Diesel and the Ducklings, but that wasn't very good despite Ari and Bert being prominent to the plot for once. This episode presents his dynamic with Daisy and how reckless behaviour can truly cause harm, leading to one of the best scenes in the franchise and one I've banged on about since I first spoke about it. Diesel doing this confession and letting out exactly what's been plaguing his mind for not just this episode, but since he's been on Sodor it seems. To Daisy, who is presumed to be asleep, but is revealed to have heard it all after Diesel leaves. It's such a telling scene where we get to know exactly what Diesel is thinking and gets us closer to him than we ever have before. Obviously the other elements like Den and Dart's minor roles, the dynamic itself, Tracy Oberman's talented voice acting as Daisy make it the sum up more so than that, but talking about Springtime for Diesel and not mentioning that scene will forever be impossible for me. Give me some slack please. Season 20 is a season that pulled out all the stops to produce some of the best episodes I'd seen in like 10 years. But there were blunders here and there, episodes that were just bad and didn't belong in this lineup, like a modern Season 5 minus the explosions, ghosts and attempted murder. In my opinion, this season was so hard to choose for, so please do not judge my pick too harshly, as it's really hard to pick just one episode to be the one that encapsulates everything it has going for it, all 28 episodes. In the end, Skiff and the Mermaid was my choice. There's a wholesomeness to it that's seen in episodes like Letters to Santa and Love Me Tender, as well as the really stupid to Topham Hatt antics that encapsulate his new personality well. This is seen primarily in Buckle Tracks and Bumpy Trucks, but also other episodes in small doses. Again, this was really tricky to do, so please ease up on your old boy. Time for the most underrated Thomas and Friends season in my opinion, with Season 19. Yeah, as much as it is a better season than some give it credit for, there are some duds in here, and it's one of those duds that I chose because of its reputation as the weakest Brenner season. Thomas the Babysitter is a weird ass plot that doesn't feel like Thomas, and definitely represents the more generalised and mainstream direction the show was going on. With Thomas having to take care of this whiny ass child all day to give the brat's mother some time to sleep. At least Thomas is shown to be very caring here, a trait seen in episodes like Snow Place Like Home, Slow Steven and Helping Hero. As a story, it's also kind of menial, reflecting episodes like The Other Side of the Mountain and Goodbyes to Topham Hatt. I wish I could have spoken about a better episode for this one, but I felt like it was warranted, as despite the higher highs, this one has some low lows. I'm looking at you, Henry Spots Trouble. Up next is Season 18, a season that does a lot and does it all well. It's creative with its episodes and calls back to its roots more than once. The entirety of Old Reliable Edward, for example, feels stylistically very similar to the early age of the show with its characters and amusing, simple narrative. But I didn't end up choosing this one and instead went for Toad's Bright Idea. The fact this episode takes place during the events of Tale of the Brave is so cool, and I'm surprised it never happened again outside of this special. That's what makes it stand out, as it's very creative in a unique way, much like other episodes in the season. And with the protagonist of Toad being represented as this wise and stern individual similar to the Season 7 episode Snow Engine, it feels very similar in terms of character. Like with some of the other seasons, there are many episodes to choose from here, so it's tricky to pick one definitive pick, but for me, this is it. Season 17 is the beginning of the Brenner era, and with the amount of episodes that pair two unlikely characters together and the episodes that focused on mostly neglected characters, there was only ever one pick in my mind. Kevin's cranky friend, whilst not the most amazing episode out there, represents the season's methods well. Kevin, a character who hasn't really had the limelight before and is only ever really seen in the Steamworks, except for that one time he was kidnapped by Percy, goes to the docks and meets Cranky, an unlikely pairing which results in Cranky shunning Kevin and Kevin feeling bad until the Vat Controller sorts them both out. We get the interesting dynamic seen in episodes like The Switch, The Afternoon Tea Express, and Henry's Hero, and we get a lesser seen character thriving in the spotlight, similar to Steamy Stafford and Scruff's Makeover. It's not the best episode in the world, but encapsulates the vibe of the season, and being the first episode of the first Brenner season, it just makes it all the better. Now on to the back end of the hit era with Season 12, full of terrible shit, but what episode best captures it all? For me, it's Tram Trouble. We get a useless new character in Flora, who is never seen again past this episode and is literally the blandest engine ever despite being the first female tram engine to grace the series. She does absolute fuck all, and then we have Thomas being shoved into the middle of the narrative to provide mindless conflict that feels like one big over-exaggeration. Then there's the true protagonist of the episode, Toby, being shoved into a tertiary role in spite of him clearly being the better fit. All of this can be seen in other episodes across the season. Heave-Ho Thomas and the Party Surprise have useless new characters, and Thomas is shoved in wherever he can be. Hell, we got 2 episodes this season highlighting the conflicts between him and Diesel specifically. You're telling me we couldn't have had one episode where it was literally any other Steam team member going up against him? I'd almost argue that Don't Go Back should have had Ari and Bert as the main characters, as they seem to fit what the narrative requires of them more than Thomas and Diesel do. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I'm not much fond of this season, and my thoughts on the next season we'll talk about are somewhat similar, if a little more lenient. However, my pick for this season, Season 11, ended up being a more popular episode to once again reflect the popularity of the season by fans. Emily's Rubbish introduces one of the most well-known characters in recent Thomas and Friends history, Whiff, who works at the waste dump. This season introduced us to many characters who became infamous within the Thomas fandom, characters like Madge, and Billy, and Hector, and of course this guy. All of these characters are well known for one reason or another, but Whiff was the one that had the most made out of him past this season, and was seen all the way up to seasons like 17. That, along with the strong pairing with a character that isn't Thomas, really highlights its strength as an episode and was picked by me, as most fans look back on this season positively, even if I think that halfway through it seems like the writers have given up. Season 10's pick is much trickier for me, as there are a lot of very generic episodes. It's the main bulk of the season, which isn't inherently bad, but the ratio of good to bad is pretty close to 50-50. In the end, I chose Thomas and the Colours, as it's this pretty typical football-focused plot that's absolutely boring and generic as fuck. Much like this season, there's nothing to say about it really, apart from it doesn't do a lot. So let's move on. Now for Season 9, my pick for this season is Mighty Mac, as not only does this episode reflect the higher quality of episodes in this season, but it also reflects the aspects of new characters in the season, as this is the first season under full control from Hit to introduce them. In terms of morals, it's still quite generic with its focus on teamwork, and Thomas, like with many episodes in this season, has a prominent background role, even though it's not his episode. He's the recurring character meeting the new character. This is seen in episodes like Thomas's Day Off, Molly's Special, and Thomas and the New Engine. Plus, this season reintroduced the narrow gauge engines, and Mighty Mac are a duo of narrow gauge engines. This is the only answer for this season, it has to be. Season 8 is a very polarising season. Some label it as the worst hit season, some label it as the best, and a very polarising episode in my opinion is Henry and the Wishing Tree. This episode does very well with the continuity of Henry's love of the forest, and being his own universe is Lorax, but it definitely has its issues. Henry's voice narration isn't great, and there's a lack of continuity when it comes to the concept of Henry pulling coaches with this one. It's definitely lower down on my list nowadays than it was back when I made my Season 8 ranking because of these issues, but like with the season itself, I can see the good aspects in amongst the bollocks that means it isn't the worst in the world for me. We've made it to the classic series finally, and we're beginning with Season 7, an extremely underrated season for me and ones with loads of events and things happening for us to absorb. A roller coaster, if you will, which is why my pick for this one is Rheneas and the roller coaster, because a roller coaster is exactly what this season is. There's so many characters that get the spotlight, old and new, so many locations we get to see that are new. It has its weaker episodes and some of the strongest of the entire classic series, but most of all it is a beautiful send-off season to the OG crew of Thomas. Whilst this episode may not tick that last box on that list there, it definitely has a fast-paced sequence amongst brand new sets that really do represent what goes on in the season well. When it comes to Season 6, I cannot lie, I could not choose. So much so that I have two picks because it's impossible to find one episode that captures enough elements of the season to truly embody it. My first pick is Rusty Saves the Day for its confusing logic of how the Skarloey Railway is talked about, as if Skarloey and Rheneas have their own branch line. Plus we get a rather sweet aspect with Rusty trying to help the pair, and the inclusion of the new character Elizabeth is representative of the care the writers had when writing for the newbies of the season. As well as this, I find Rusty Saves the Day rather overhated, much like the season itself, and all of that is why it's my first pick. My second pick is A Friend in Need. Of course, this is a part of the Jack and the Pack saga and holds a large number of new characters. This one also has good morals, displaying Jack to almost go back to his old ways from Jack jumps in before checking himself and holding back. Clearly very strong there. Then there's the bridge collapse segment. This isn't technically a crash I guess, but it is representative of the big crashes this season. I mean, we praise Season 5 for its insane crashes, but this season had some great ones too, like the crashes from Gordon Takes a Tumble, Dunkin' Duncan, and of course Percy's Chocolate Crunch. I'll tell you what, when this video is done, I'll release a poll allowing you to vote for which one you think you'd rather have as the pick, and whichever one wins can be the pick for that season, because as I said, I genuinely cannot choose. Moving on to Season 5, once again I'm met with a lot of choices, but the one I went with in the end is A Better View for Gordon, as it is an episode with great special effects and an iconic crash, two things that built up this season to be the favourite of many fans. Not only this, but like with the many Season 5 episodes, the main character of this one is a STEAM team member, and overall it is pretty well liked, representing the community thoughts of the season as a whole. Sure, this pick doesn't tackle the spooky episodes, but there are far less spooky episodes than normal episodes in this season, no matter how iconic they are. Choosing an episode like this is more of a sum up of the season than something like Stepney Gets Lost. Also, I didn't want to speak about that episode again, as I've already done so recently, and I'm trying to steer in the direction of episodes I haven't touched on in a while. Although I guess that didn't really work, for Season 21 did it. Season 4 is an easy pick for me, as this episode quite literally bridges the gap between the two subsections of the season, and that episode is Rusty to the Rescue. The character combination of the narrow gauge Rusty and the standard gauge Stepney does well to reflect the omnibus of Skarloey Railway episodes this season, and the volume of Northwestern Railway episodes that come after. As well as this, it's beautifully filmed and has some great sets and lighting highlighting the well-crafted nature of the season. However, like with the season itself, it is commonly criticised for changing things. For the episode, it's how Stepney comes to the railway, and how that's a complete carbon copy of Oliver's introduction from Season 3's Escape. With the season itself, it's how the mid-Sodal Railway saga comes first, and that, narratively speaking, is incorrect. Would I have liked to have seen the Railway series chronology in the TV series? Maybe. I think its effectiveness purely hinges on adapting the story Duck and Dukes, which they didn't do. Maybe it's because of them changing the order, and so this Duke reveal wouldn't mean anything as we already know who that is, or it could be because they just didn't have the budget to buy and make little mini cameras to sit on Peter Sam's train of ruthless coaches, as well as the other stuff needed to make the episode properly. I have no clue, but I know that with the episodes we got in the Railway series order, it just wouldn't work for me. But that's enough of me rambling, let's move on to the next season. Season 3 is a season I do quite like a lot, but this episode is one that I just find to be okay. Donald's Duck hones in on the settings and characters we'll see a lot of in this season, and the type of lighter and less dramatic plots seen in the season. The main characters of Duck and Donald have prominence in the season, or at least Donald's twin does, and whilst there is some more intense, higher stakes episodes, namely Escape, Toby's Tightrope and Heroes, there's many more simple and slice of life episodes in there. And whilst there are some more intense and higher stakes episodes, Escape, Toby's Tightrope, Heroes, there are many more simple and slice of life episodes in there. Buzz Buzz, Thomas Percy and the Post Train, Thomas Percy and the Dragon, One Good Turn, Edward Trevor and the Really Useful Party, A Scarf for Percy, I could go on. But again, I'm sure you'd rather not me do that, so let's continue. My pick for Season 2 is Percy Takes the Plunge, and that is partially down to the sets seen in the episode. Once again, I made my picks before all the viewer ranking stuff, so my bad, Thrares, sorry. A lot of Thomas's branch line is seen in this season in episodes like Thomas Percy and the Coal, Woolly Bear, Thomas and Trevor, and of course Ghost Train, but this episode also provides us with an all-time iconic crash, which this season is full of. Also, this one holds similarities to another episode from the previous season, Down the Mine, and to be fair, there's a few episodes in this season that can claim that they also share elements with Season 1 episodes. Percy and Harold is very reminiscent of Thomas and Bertie, and Duck Takes Charge reminds me a lot of Trouble in the Shed when it comes to the treatment of the smaller engines and how they get their revenge. Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree is a Christmas episode that finishes off the season by gathering together all of the cast in one location for a celebration that has the exact same carol playing at some point and features Thomas as the protagonist, in which there is a rescue operation revolving around being trapped in the snow. Just like Thomas's Christmas party. Not an uncommon thing in the season by any stretch, and whilst I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing or a stain on the season, it is a recurring thing and something interesting to take note of. Finally, we've reached Season 1, and which episode did I choose? Well, for me, it could only be one episode. Thomas and the Breakdown Train was my pick, as like with the season itself, it's very prominent in the history of the show and to the wider community. It was a turning point for the franchise having these stories be televised, just like how it was a turning point for Thomas the Tank Engine in terms of character and what he'd go on to do and work as. And yes, some people disagree with the idea of Thomas's arc coming about this way, just like how some Railway series lovers out there disagree with the TV series in general, but for better or worse, many love Thomas, just like how many people love the show. This is Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, and I couldn't have picked another episode to represent the show's very first outing. Plus there's some form of crash in there, though it's not seen, conveying the laid back nature of the show at this point, so there's also that. So, what do you think of my picks? Do you agree, disagree? Also, what are some of your picks for your sum-up episodes of each season? Let me know all that down below, and until next time, I've been Peter Sam, you've been you, and watch out for those Railway series purists, they'll get you, like some form of cult. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, kids! It's bad for you, there's poison in there, don't drink it!